Hello world, I am Curtis Simpson and this is Jective's Typography News number 14. Today is August 24th, 2025. I have a lot of news to go through. It's going to be a branding heavy episode today. Typically we have like a new release, new font release heavy episode. But today there is a ton of branding and not quite as many new typefaces this week, but the ones we do have are very nice, and the branding stuff is very interesting this week. So I also have some events to go over. We do that first, and then at the end, I've got an article to look at. And if I have time, we're going to listen to the long-awaited interview that I did with Andy from xheightable. I hope I have time to get to that. If not, I do have a backup plan. But let's go ahead and get started with the events. There it is. Not quite typography related, but finally the release date for Silksong, Hollow Knight Silksong, is known. It was released 3 days ago. This trailer was at Gamescom, and if you want to see right here, that is Trajan Pro bold, so we can get a little bit of typography in this. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because in 2 weeks, there's not going to be a typography news because I'm going to be no-lifing this game all weekend. And you should too, if you have any interest in video games, any interest in Metroidvanias. This is the follow-up to Hollow Knight Silksong, and I'm super excited for it. So I'm just going to let you know, I will be here next week, but 2 weeks from now, we're going to have an off week because I'm going to be playing this. Let's move on to some real typography news, though. I will just say that in Hollow Knight, I always found it interesting that they use Trajan even in the UI. And I thought that it was like a strange decision the first time around when I played it, but now I can't imagine Silksong using like a sans serif instead of using Trajan. So the other thing about this game is that it has a like a made-up language. I know there are a lot of games that do that. I think one recently that I played was Nine Souls, but they do have like a made-up typographic language. There it is, right there. Boom. So you can see in the background there. This here is like a language that they made up, like an actual typeface that they made up. So I'll look at that. I don't know if there's going to be anything to talk about with it, and I'm not a fan of spoilers, so if it even remotely spoils anything, I'm not going to talk about it. But I am interested to see what the community figures out about that. Let's move on to real industry stuff, though. Words of Type, they're going to be having their next, what would you call it? Words of Type Conversation, episode number 5 is coming up. I've watched a few of these, and I don't want to be overly critical about it, but they're pretty disjointed, pretty unorganized. So I usually hop in and hop out after just a short amount of time. But this coming one, Words of Type website, though, is great. The encyclopedia is amazing. We've looked at this before, if we can get it to load. We looked at this on another episode. I'm not sure which one, but this is a great resource, a great tool, especially for working with international designers, because you can look at all of this stuff in English, but you can also look at it in Chinese, French, German, Japanese, Korean, and Spanish. So it's really cool for like cross-referencing terms and stuff between one language and the other. But let's see, what date do I have listed for this? September 5th. So September 5th, this is going to be the day after Hollow Knight releases. So I'll pop into this. I think I could take a break for this because the books behind me here, these are from Sofie Beier, and these are books that I'm going to do reviews of. So if you're interested in knowing anything particularly about the Type Trick series, go ahead and leave a comment, and I'll be sure to cover that when I do the full flip through book reviews of those 3. But she is going to be one of the guests on episode 5 of Words of Type, the Words of Type conversation. So I'm really excited for that. Like I said, the past ones haven't like really resonated with me, but I think Sofie Beier is such a great resource, such a great, I don't know, this, I pull up this here, the Royal Danish Academy, specifically a center for visibility design, because she does a ton of research, you know, her and the organization in general does a ton of research into typography and what makes it actually like legible and readable and what effects it scientifically has. Like she's doing like actual scientific studies to figure out what makes for the best typography. So I'm really interested in what she has to say. During Typographics 2025, she did give kind of like a 5-minute little pre-recorded presentation talking about hyperlegible typefaces and how the ones that are meant to be for dyslexic readers typically aren't actually good for dyslexic readers. And she went into a little bit of that. So September 5th, a little less than 2 weeks from now, that Friday, 2 Fridays from now, she's going to be on Words of Type Conversation episode 5. Next up, I attended an online Zoom meeting for ATypeable or ATypI. I would say ATypeable. ATypI 2026. They did kind of like a, what would you call it? They did kind of like a pre-submission type, pre-conference type thing. I don't even know what you would call it now. Basically, they had a Zoom event where they presented these 2 conferences that are coming up. This is the first time that they've done 2 in 1 year. They're doing one in Stanford, and then they're doing one in Sharjah. It's going to be in the United Arab Emirates. And then the other is obviously Stanford, California in the US. But I attended this meeting. There's not a ton to say about it. They basically made a note of why they're doing it in 2 locations, talked about kind of what to expect, talked about the submission deadlines and things like that. So I've linked this in the description, along with everything else from the entire episode is linked in the description. So like usual, if you don't want to listen to me talk about all of this stuff, you can go ahead and click the description, click on any of the links and skip ahead and check out all the news on your own time. But if you want to stick around and listen to me, comment in chat or leave a comment if you're watching the replay of this, that is great as well. But yeah, ATypI coming up next year. You know, we're about a year out from these. You know, if we average the dates there, one's at the end of May, one's at the end of October. Submission deadlines though are coming up. So if you're the type of person that submits to these things, yeah, be on top of that. One other thing that was submission that I didn't have on here was the communication arts typography deadline is also coming up. So about a week after that Words of Type interview or Words of Type conversation is going to be the typography deadline for communication arts. So I don't know how many people that watch Typography News also submit to these competitions. I'm not someone that submits to these competitions, but I do like to see the winners sometimes. One point to note with these types of things is it does cost money to enter them. So it's not like you pay a certain amount and you get in the magazine or the publication. It's not like you can pay extra to get in, as far as I know. But you do have to pay to enter, and then if you don't get in, you don't get your money back or anything. It just basically helps support the magazine or the publication. So typography is September 12th. They've got all of them on there. I just linked the general competitions deadlines page in the description, but if you are interested in something other than typography, that's on there too. Next, and I think this is the last event that I have my 3 monitors set up, so I'm kind of looking all over right now. The last event that I was going to talk about is WordPress, and this is WordPress WordCamp US. This is actually the most, what would you say, the one that's coming the closest upcoming event. This is the one that's coming up this week. It's going to start on Wednesday, but there won't be anything for most of us to see until Thursday. So, or no, starts on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. There are going to be live streams on the WordPress YouTube. So let me get my face out of the way here. So you can see here, they've already got them loaded up, and you can see the start times for each one of these. This is going to have my start time on it. So it says 1 p.m. for me. That's probably going to be different for you. But there's going to be a ton going on here. So I could go ahead and show you this real quick. There's going to be 2 videos like simultaneously live streaming. There's going to be track 1 and track 2. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I'm guessing if we go to the schedule here, we can probably see what track 1 and track 2 are. So this is also linked in the description, wordcamp.org. And this is going to be taking place in Portland, Oregon, USA. And you can see that there's 4 different days, but the contributor day is going to start on Tuesday. And that there's not going to be anything to live stream or anything like that. I think that's more of an IRL, like people that really go to this get to kind of enjoy that on their own. But then Wednesday, you can see this is a showcase day, and then Thursday and Friday are going to be the presentation days. So it looks like these go from like 8 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. And you can see, looks like opening remarks start at 9 a.m. That's going to be Pacific time because Portland is in the Pacific Northwest. But I don't know how much of this is going to be like specifically typography, probably, a pretty small amount. But WordPress powers, a huge portion of the entire internet and or the websites anyway. And I just think it's interesting to watch these kind of events, these kind of conferences, because it gives you some insight into where the industry is going, even if it's not a tool that you necessarily use. So like Figma was a little while back. I watched the Figma stuff. I can't remember what they called it, but if Adobe Max, I think, is coming in October, I'll be watching that stuff. So I think that even if you don't use WordPress, even if you're not really that into WordPress, it might be worth popping in and out some of these, presentations, some of these days. There's going to be 3 days, 6 different live streams to watch over those 3 days. So WordPress WordCamp US is coming up, and that's going to be the 27th through the 29th. 26th is just for other people, but you can see these on their WordPress YouTube channel. That was the last event. Let's get into branding, because branding, like I said, is the biggest stuff going on this week. I'm just gonna pop open a bunch of these right now, and we will let those load in the background while I start talking about the first one. The first one is this presidential order by Donald Trump, and it's pretty interesting. It doesn't really matter what your stance is on him. If you're interested in typography and you're interested in design and you live in the US or not, he's creating the National Design Studio by presidential order. He created this. It says August 21st, so this is recent. Just 3 days ago, he created this via executive order. Basically, he's creating, let me move my face out of the way again. Basically, he's creating like a national design studio. They have until July 4th of next year to like present their initial kind of initial results, it says right here. Creating a chief design officer that's going to report directly to the White House Chief of Staff's office. So basically, this is going to be a design studio that operates under the executive branch, under the president. And it's going to be headed by the chief design officer, which is going to be Joe Gebbia. Joe Gebbia is one of the co-founders of Airbnb. He left Airbnb in 2022. But Axios did a decent little piece on interviewing him. It's not super in depth. I'll scroll through real quick and you can see how long it is. It's that long. Talking to Joe Gebbia, just asking him a few questions and kind of talking about what he sees as being. He's describing it as he wants the federal websites to feel like an Apple Store experience. I have no idea how that would work. Because the Apple Store is a physical retail location and federal websites are not. I'm guessing I haven't been to an Apple Store in a while, but typically when you go to an Apple Store, I will say in my, 15-year experience with Apple products, has been very good. If your phone breaks, you walk in there, you tell them what's wrong with it. And if you have Apple Care, they're going to fix it on the spot. I lost one of my AirPods once. You just go in there, pay whatever the small fee is. They give you a new AirPod and you walk out. Like it's not like trying to cancel your internet or trying to cancel cable or trying to switch phone providers. I think that's gotten a little bit easier with eSIMs now, but or trying to cancel like some magazine subscription or something that makes you call a phone number. maybe that's what it means. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but I'm interested to see. So this new design, what are we calling this? The National Design Studio. This new National Design Studio, I guess, is only slated to exist for like 3 or 4 years. So it's going to exist, kind of do its job, and then they'll decide what to do with it. Interesting concept and an interesting way to not necessarily like waste taxpayer money, but at the same time, I think that a national design studio, like if you're going to make it, just keep it. I can't imagine that it would be super expensive to keep running. I think you could probably find a lot of synergy. I don't know, I can see it both ways, right? Because you have all of these organizations within the government. And right now they're all designing their own stuff. There's not a lot of cohesion. And yeah, I can see how it would be frustrating. Just me trying to navigate them for visas and getting, getting records from the US to get my daughter her birth certificate and stuff like that, being born abroad. I can see that the websites are not cohesive. It would be nice to have a very cohesive Apple-like experience. I get that part of it, I guess. All the Apple experiences pretty much feel the same, So I could see that being interesting and useful. But my fear would be that you would spend money on this, spend time on this, kind of redo the whole system for 3 or 4 years. And then if this agency ceases to exist, all of the smaller departments and stuff are just going to go back to doing what they did before and just do their own thing. And there's not going to be cohesion, and there's not going to be any sense of this Apple-like experience. So I will definitely be reporting on this as we get news. Right now, there's not a ton that we know about it. Executive order, this has been out for 3 days. Executive order, Joe Gebbia from Airbnb founding is going to be the head of this new agency or this new design studio. He's going to be the chief design officer, and will report directly to the White House Chief of Staff's office. And it is worth noting, I guess, that the current chief of staff has absolutely no design experience. So I'm not sure. I don't know. I hope that this is organized well. I hope that competent designers are in charge of this. And I hope that despite the politics, the National Design Studio is able to get good quality designers. And I hope that people are not maligned or punished for trying to make a better design for the US. So we'll see how that goes. I will be reporting on it, especially when there's typography involved. Side note, whenever the US, whenever Trump got in office, he replaced the typography with this font. And I wish that I could tell you exactly. Actually, I can't tell you exactly what it is. This is Instrument. It's Instrument Serif. I actually interviewed briefly the designer of this. It was right when I started Jectives, and I didn't end up actually including the interview in any news videos because the off-the-record interview and the on-the-record interview were in contradiction of each other. The designer really didn't want to talk about it too much, didn't want to comment on Trump, didn't want to comment on like the font being used, and seemed just kind of like annoyed in general. So I decided just not to include it, but yeah, we'll just leave it at that. I did have an interaction with him though, and it was fine, but I didn't end up including it in anything. Next up is the Goodwood Racecourse, and this is by UnitedUs. This is an interesting one. I'm not too into horse racing. I'm not into horse racing at all, to be honest. But I thought that this was interesting, and I think that it's a nice type-driven brand identity. So between the images and the typography, I think that you really get something unique. And this is just an assumption. Like I said, I'm not into horse racing. My assumption is that this differentiates it from other race courses based on the typography and color and stuff that they've got going on here. So this is the UnitedUs website right now. And you can see some of the typography right here. It's a little bit trendy. We see this with a lot of branding and a lot of campaigns right now, but I still think that it's interesting. So they're going with this glorious thing, glorious Goodwood, and then they've got 3 different kind of like profiles or styles or characters that they're using to come up with these campaigns. I will say that I think the yellow and red, because we're going to get to some black and white in here in a second, I think the yellow and red really do a much better job at owning a brand identity, because humans, we see colors first. I don't know if you've ever looked at your phone and tapped the wrong icon because the colors are similar. I do it all the time. I always harp on this, but brands need to own a color. Like Jectives is just green. I have green. That's my color. But Goodwood Racecourse here, I thought that their colors, I thought they were owning this red and yellow. And it's kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say that necessarily say that it's obnoxious, but it is a little bit obnoxious in like a good way, because if all these other courses are trying to be very prestigious and stuff like that, again, this is an assumption here. If they're trying to be more prestigious and more luxury and things like that, I think doing something a little more playful like this is a fun way to own a brand and own a color. I paused on this page here because I want to look at this pamphlet here, this booklet that they've got, because they've got all of the events that are going to be coming up, and they're entirely in text. It's all typography, just dates, event, date, event, date, event. I think it's really cool. I love to see a type-driven brand. I would say this is like 50-50 between the type and the imagery, because the imagery is very identifiable. I don't know. It's very like, I feel like they can really own this imagery because it has a certain vibe to it. All of these pictures go together. I think that UnitedUs did a really good job with this. I did reach out to them to see what the typeface was. I could run it through some kind of font identification, I guess, but I wanted to reach out to them directly and see what it is. Didn't hear back from them. That's fine. I did note to them though, because typically the way that I would check it would be the same way that I just did on the White House's website, which is use this extension here that I've talked about before. It's called WoT Font. And you can just scroll over a typeface that's embedded into a website or used on a website and know what it is. But you can see here the typography is always consistent. They're always using that same font. They're using a lot of caps. They're using a lot of the word glory. But then you get to something like this and it's black and white, and it feels very different from that red and yellow. It has much less energy. It feels different. And maybe this is one of those 3 sort of profiles that I was talking about before. But if you're thinking about this race course and in your brain, this race course is red and yellow, when you see this, I don't think the average person is going to recognize, oh, hey, that's the same font. Oh, hey, that's like the same type treatment. Maybe not even the same imagery, because you just really think about that red and yellow in my brain. And you can see down here at the bottom that they have worked with Goodwood on some other events and branding and stuff like that, but we're not going to get into those today. Let's talk about Anna. I don't know how to say Anna's name. This is Anna. I'm going to say it both different ways. Wanczyk, maybe, or Wanczyk. I'm going to go with Wanczyk. I think that's probably the way it is. I was not familiar with her before. This is her Instagram. Right here, it seems that she is I don't know, like a collaborator, or it seems that she has some sort of affiliation with Creative Boom. If you look through her personal Instagram, you can see that she's worked with Creative Boom. So this interview is from Creative Boom, and it is on her rebrand from CZYK design to Anna and I've kind of softened my stance on this since I first saw this article, because when I first saw this article, I didn't really like it. Let me go ahead and give you the objective news real quick, and then I'll add my color. I'll add my subjective opinion to it. So the facts of it are, she was freelance. She began freelancing and just kind of fell into the studio name of CZYK Design, and then didn't ever really like it. People couldn't remember the order of the letters, she said, and people couldn't. Let let me go down real quick right here. People couldn't tag her and things like that, and it was kind of a headache, I guess. So here's the old branding. It's not great, if we're being honest. Right there. I don't know if you can pause this. Oh, you can pause on Instagram. We'll go ahead and let this play again. So 2022, you can see it right here. This was the branding before. I would agree that this Anna and is an improvement. And I really like the sentiment and like the concept behind it, but I'm just not, I don't know that this is a good way to brand a company, Anna and, with this ampersand. I love saying it, Anna and the conversation that she has here with Creative Boom talks about how she very often does collaborative efforts, even when she's working with clients. You know, it's collaboration between the client and her. So Anna and then presumably whoever she was working with. Makes a lot of sense. It's a lot of fun. And she's doing these kind of textures with the ampersands here. The problem with using an ampersand is that now you can no longer type in, you can't type Anna and get anything. So if I type Anna and, what am I getting? I'm getting a bunch of Anna stuff because they don't, you know, search engines don't understand this. So let's put the quotes on there. Anna and. Nothing, no results, nothing at all. Let me move my face out of the way so you can see. Goose egg, nothing. And this is a brand new brand. You know, she just renamed it. Let's go back up to the top of this. Just renamed it, I guess, July 13th. So a little over a month ago. But still, 0 results when you type Anna and with an ampersand and you put the quotes on it. This should give you, you know, it should go exactly to the website if this was the only thing. But this is the problem, because you can't use an ampersand in a URL, right? So she has to type out Anna and then .studio is her website. So Anna and .studio. I ended up finding her on Instagram by just typing in her full name. I later found this Anna and .studio. Let's look at the actual brand though. So the naming, I like the concept. I like the idea behind it. It's this collaborative thing. It's better than CZYK design. Sure, it's better. It's fun to say. Anna and. That's fun to say. But just because it's better and fun to say doesn't mean that it's necessarily a good idea. This is where we get into the subjective part. The colors are fun. You know that if you've watched before, you know that I'm not really ever a fan of using a bunch of colors. It looks like her palette though is somewhat limited. I think she's got 4 or 5 colors on here. I can live with that. She's got these, they're all bright. You know, the colors do work well together. She's got this kinetic typography going on, and she says that it's intentionally, let me go to her real website. She says that it's intentionally, you know, unfinished, intentionally, it looks intentionally like undesigned almost. I'm going to disagree here and say that I don't think that's a good idea. If someone's coming to you for the first time and they think, oh, I need a designer, let me go look at this Anna and then they see something that seems like it's unfinished and not designed well, I don't think it's gonna inspire a lot of confidence. The thing that might though is if you go and look at her actual portfolio, if you think that these are, you know, fit what you want from a designer, from a studio, then that would make sense. So maybe it doesn't necessarily need to, but you get that initial first impression. And if I see this, I don't know how much, if I'm not a designer, if I can't like have any kind of imagination, I don't know that this typography is going to inspire a lot of confidence that the designer is going to design me something good. Does that make sense? But I don't want to be too hard on her because I do think that she seems like a nice person. I don't know her, but just based on the things that I've seen on Creative Boom, seen on Instagram, she seems like a nice person and seems like a competent designer. I just think that there are going to be a lot of headaches that someone clearly doesn't think through when they put an ampersand in their company name. And they mention like, oh, it's this unique thing. It's not really that unique because you've got And Walsh for Jessica Walsh's brand. So you're basically And Walsh if I only heard the names and Walsh and then I heard Anna and, I would think, oh, she just copied Jessica Walsh and made, you know, a similar name so that it sounds kind of like designy. I don't know. I'm being pretty critical here, but the colors are nice. It's definitely an improvement over the old branding, but I think this is going to be one that's going to cause an equal amount of headaches. Let's move on to something I'm going to be a little more positive about, and that is this. I might be saying this wrong. This is de Hallen. Basically, this is like a tram or a train station. Let me see which one it is. Tram, train station. Are they the same thing? I initially saw this on the brandidentity.com. Another bad URL, the-brandidentity.com. You'd have to tell somebody that every single time, the-brandidentity.com. But I saw this first on there. I'm not going to go through this article because I don't want to just rip off their stuff, but this is where I saw it first, so I want to point it out to them. I want to point it out to you, and this is linked in the description. But I found this interview really cool. I'm going to kind of talk about the highlights in my brain, and then we'll look at the actual websites and stuff like that, and the typeface. So in the interview, they talk about how when they were rebranding this tram, I really wish I knew if it was a tram or a train station. It's a station. I should have looked this up before. Whatever this station is, De Hallen. Basically, they wanted something that represents all of the different unique people that are going to be going there, and that's a very difficult thing to do. We've talked about this with like museums and schools and you know, different things where there's just going to be so much variety, and so when you're trying to represent a bunch of people, it can be pretty difficult because not everyone just doesn't fit into like one design aesthetic. What they ended up doing was using these unique, they had these unique shapes, they had these unique symbols that were for each of the different stops, each of the different lines. And what they did was they took those symbols and turned it into the branding. Oh, you can see them right there. So see those symbols that are going on right here? You can see them. They were used basically, I think, from like the origin of De Hallen. And they took those symbols and basically expanded them into the entire brand. It's a giant color palette, but it works here. It's really fun. And you can see what they're doing with all these geometric shapes. It's really interesting, but here we're going to talk about typography. So let's get to the typeface. The typeface is another word that I don't know how to say. Bagrino? Where's the type? Okay, it's right here at the bottom. I don't know if this button's going to get bigger though. Probably not. No, it's not going to get bigger. We can still make the screen a little bigger though. Bagrino. So let's go ahead and look at it, you know, on the website in context and stuff, and then we'll come back to the page. But you can see all of the different shapes and things like that. So there have been a lot of times when I have seen a typeface like, I'm going to say Bugrino. No, I'm going to say Bugrino. I'm going to say Bugrino. This is the studio that made it. Another word I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce. But I'm sure you've seen a typeface like this before. That's kind of like geometric, but it's kind of got this conflicting geometric thing where they're like, got these heavy ink spots on it because they're filling in parts with squares and then, or not necessarily squares, but yeah, they've got these like squared off corners, even though the geometry is rounded, the counters are rounded. It's very striking, but it's one of those things where you're like, man, how would you ever use this typeface? Like, where would there ever be a good use for it? I've never looked at this and thought like, oh, I know exactly where that's going to work. But who was this? This is On a Daily Basis is who did this design. On a Daily Basis did this design for De Hallen. And they took all these shapes, all these symbols, and made this geometric design. And then they found the perfect typeface with Bagrino because it's got all of those geometric shapes, but it does it in such a fun way. It's very similar to this kaleidoscope type thing that they've got going on. And it perfectly matches the architecture of the building. Let's scroll back up. Maybe we can get some here. We've got it on one of these. So you've got the architecture of the building itself. So you've got these arches and stuff in the background that you can see. And then when you look at the typeface, you can see those arches inside the M and inside of the H here. It just really, it's serendipitous, really, that you would almost think that this would be a bespoke typeface specifically for de Hallen, created by on a daily basis, something like that. But it's not. It's one of those typefaces that you see and you just, I don't know, that it exists, but you never, personally, it's I almost think of it as like a display typeface. It's so out there that you would never think there would be a project that would be able to use this on, but here it is in use on the de Hallen website, de Hallen Amsterdam. And you can see the full design. They're using this in the UI and it works beautifully. I think when they've got larger bodies of text, so when they've got larger bodies of text, they're not using that. Let's see what they are using. They're using overused grotesque, and then you can see right there, Bugrino. So they're not using it for like the body copy, but they're using it for the interface. They're using it for the buttons. They're using it for the H1, they're using it for the headers and stuff like that. And I just think it looks great. It looks like they have like events and theaters and markets and all kinds of stuff here. And there's some more of the architecture there. You can see the arches and things like that. But man, I just think on a daily basis did an incredible job with this branding. This might want to be one of the best brands that we've looked at, best brand identities that we've looked at on the channel so far. I really think they did a great job, and I think the typography on it is so perfect for the aesthetic of this. And I love that the symbols relate back to the symbols from the very beginning of like the different tram lines and stuff like that. It's a perfectly executed brand identity, in my opinion. Next up we have, Cracker Barrel. This is one that has caused a lot of headlines. I'm going to go ahead and open up all of these links right now. Let's get to where we need to be. I was afraid of this. Some of these the Cracker Barrel website doesn't work for me because I'm in Brazil right now. I was able to look at it earlier because I was on a VPN to get to the US. If you don't know, I'm from Las Vegas, but I live in Brazil right now. But let's look at the Cracker Barrel. Let's look at what we can. And I do have some images I can pull up as well. So let me go ahead and pull those up in the background while we look at this Cracker Barrel Instagram. But let me pull these up on the other screen so that I have them ready to go. Okay, so Cracker Barrel caused a lot of headlines. Initially, I was going to talk about the news, the publications, and the Good Morning America interview. But man, this one really got out of control. People lost their freaking minds over this logo. The thing about brand rebrands and refreshes and stuff is that the brand is so much more than the logo. Let's just sit on that for a second. The brand is so much more than the logo. I really need my chapstick and I don't know where I put it. That's unfortunate. Okay, so this is the Cracker Barrel branding. Let me go ahead and show you these pictures because I do want to show you why this makes a little more sense in context before we actually look at what everyone's losing their minds over. So this is the Cracker Barrel logo, and then they've got their monogram, they've got their color palette, they've got some badges and stuff down there on the bottom left. Let me see, my face is in the way, like always. So they got some badges and stuff down there. Let's cover up this food because that doesn't really matter, right? And then they got the two typefaces. I did reach out to Cracker Barrel directly. Maybe we'll hear back from them this next week to see what these typefaces are. I haven't heard back. I'm going to email them again. I'm going to try to get the full branding guide so we can take a look at this next week, hopefully, fingers crossed. I would love to look at the full brand because I honestly think people are losing their minds over what's actually a good rebrand. My initial notes on this that I wrote down, because all I saw in the beginning was probably what everyone else saw, which was them going from, this logo right here, let's pause this, them going from this logo that everybody knows, which is not a good logo, guys. This is not a good logo. I think anybody watching this channel, anybody watching Typography News number 14, you already know that this is not a good logo. Is it iconic? Yeah, it's existed for so long, and it does fit the kind of like cheesy, kitschy aesthetic of Cracker Barrel. I'll give you that, but it's not a good logo. You can't resize this easily. There's just so much that's not good about it. And you can even see people saying like, change the logo back. That logo is awful. Change the logo back. Did not like that you changed the logo. You're going to lose customers. People are crazy. So they went from that old logo to the new logo. You can see there's the old one in the background there and the new one right here. New one, my initial reaction was like, okay, it's kind of boring, whatever. Let's see if we can see, oh gosh, I wish that I could see. Because since I can't see the Cracker Barrel website, we can't see it inside of the little shape. But this little barrel that they're using, they presented it in this barrel shape. Let me go ahead and pull up the picture again. So they initially presented it in this barrel shape. Oh, my face was in the middle of the screen the whole time. Sorry, guys. So they presented it, the logo, this word mark here, inside of that shape, inside of a yellow shape like that. So it was basically, it might be actually be on, let me see. It might be on this one here. Yeah, okay, so we've got it here. When I saw this picture and when I saw the last picture, I realized like, okay, it's not a bad rebrand at all. It's actually a good rebrand. Look at how cohesive all of this looks. Look at how clean the logo looks on there. They're cutting the barrel logo in half up here and then just putting the word mark, balancing the word mark inside of it. They're using this shape for the labels on the food. They're using the shape for the Cracker Barrel logo, obviously, but then they're also using it to label the fudge here. They're using it on the monogram on the tops of these different bottles and jars and stuff. They've got the monogram on there. Like, this is actually a good rebranding exercise. The problem is the internet. The problem is that people lose their freaking minds every time something like this happens. This is why we've seen like soft, quiet refreshes. My face is still in the middle, man. This is why we've seen soft refreshes come out of Walmart, Amazon, I don't know, whoever else has done them recently, but like Walmart like barely changed their logo. They just changed the blue a little bit. On that one, everybody lost their mind, like, ha ha ha, how much do they pay for this? Nothing changed. Like, and then when you actually change something, when you do something significant, and that's a significant improvement, like Cracker Barrel does, people lose their minds to want to change it back. This is something that's going to blow over. I really hope Cracker Barrel stands their ground. I think that they will. This is such a good job that they did here. I looked it up. Let me go ahead and shout out the studio real quick. I looked it up and it's supposed to be by Profit. Do I have it open here? Yeah, so I have Profit open here. They don't have this on their case studies. I think they're going to wait a little bit before they put this on there. I don't think that Profit necessarily wants their name associated with this. Man, even Denny's blocked me. So being in another country hurts my ability to report the news here, but I lost my train of thought. Profit is the studio that redesigned this. They actually hired 3 different design agencies to work on this. They have 3 different agencies of record. One of them I think was like just for social media. One of them was this visual identity, and then I think another one was like the in-store experience, or maybe it was marketing or something like that. But they had 3 different ones. I'm like 80 to 90% sure that Profit was the one that did this visual identity. And I'm just going to sit on this for a minute because I do think that it's really good. And I'm going to point out a few reasons why. One, we know the old logo is not good. Like, if you're a designer, you know this old logo that we're looking at in the background there, it's not a good logo. People can lose their minds about it. They can say like, bring it back. This is being woke or whatever it is. Like, I don't know how this is woke. I don't know why people are so mad about this. Imagine for a second if they went from this logo to this logo. Imagine like how ridiculous it would be to go from the nice, clean, like well thought out brand identity where everything's cohesive, everything works together, and then you went to like the atrocious original logo. This is coming from someone who does have like nostalgia about Cracker Barrel. I think the first time I went to Cracker Barrel, I was like 10 years old. We were traveling down to Disney and we ate there in Georgia. And then I remember when they brought a Cracker Barrel to Illinois, like Everybody was so excited. Like, it's so dumb. But I do have nostalgic feelings for Cracker Barrel. I've eaten there like once in the last 15 years. But I'm not someone that like hated the old brand just to hate it. As a designer, it wasn't a good logo. This one here though, originally I saw this barrel shape and I was like, what are they doing with that? Like, why are they using that? Because it's turned sideways like we see on this here. And in my mind, I know this is really blown out, but these yellow ones here, what they showed, in my mind, Denny's owns that kind of like hexagon shape, the yellow hexagon with Denny's written in the middle of it. Like, they own that. If you're driving down the street and you saw that, and you saw a yellow hexagon and you couldn't read what it said, you would know that it's Denny's. I do think that's a little bit, for Cracker Barrel, I think that's a little bit of a disadvantage, or a little bit of not necessarily a misstep. My initial reaction was that like, man, it kind of looks like Denny's. But then you see all of the other branding involved with it, and you can see how they're using this shape. And you can see that on the store, I know I keep flipping back and forth so much, guys, I'm sorry. You can see on this right here, they're not going to use that shape on the outside of the building. They're just going to throw the Cracker Barrel word mark on there, which looks super clean. That's so much cleaner. It's so much cleaner than this. And then when I realized that that shape, that hexagon, it's not like a Denny's knockoff, it's legit like the barrel shape. And you can see it on this icon set here. I know, again, we're going to be zooming in way too much. This real good quality, super silly. I'm sure that's a placeholder. But this right here, you can see when they put the lines on there, you can really see like, oh, it's a barrel again. So they're using this hidden barrel in all of their branding. Man, it's so frustrating when ignorant people, and I don't say ignorant in any sort of, I say ignorant in like the actual definition, which is like uneducated on something. Like, they're uneducated. They're not knowledgeable. They're not designers. They don't understand typography. They don't understand anything about brand identities. They just, react emotionally, which is what humans do. Something changes, they don't like it. Don't change anything. It's hilarious the way that people lose their minds. And if I didn't see like these couple of pictures here, if all I saw was like the Good Morning America interview with I don't know if it was the CEO or the chief marketing officer or whoever it was, if all I saw was that like super cringe interview, I would be like, yeah, it's not really great, but it's cleaner. I wouldn't think, but after seeing this, I really hope we can get our hands on a brand guideline PDF. But after seeing this, it's like, oh shit, like it's actually a good brand. It's actually good. If you go look at the Instagram and you see how like these different stickers and stamps and stuff work together, and how they're going to be able to put this barrel icon on everything with these packaging and just the in-store experience, it's going to feel cohesive. All of these things that they're selling in the store, I don't know. It's frustrating that stupid people comment on things. And you can have your opinion. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think the old branding was better. That's fine. My sort of professional opinion as a professional designer is that this is an excellent case study in branding, and also an excellent case study in why brands soft launch their rebrands and they're too scared to do something drastic like Cracker Barrel has done here because of this stupid backlash that you get from stupid people. Instead, they do things like Amazon and Walmart where they just very slightly tweak the colors and tweak the fonts. And that's fine too. That's fine. There was nothing necessarily wrong with those brands in the first place. Cracker Barrel though, I'm going to close this for the last time. Cracker Barrel though, they had this old logo on here. It needed an update. It's not a good logo. So that's my opinion on it. I know that was much less newsy than, that was much less objective. It was very subjective, but hopefully you got the objective points out of here. I've linked everything in the description. You can go make a decision for yourself on it. But the last thing I'll say is just when it comes to Cracker Barrel, the brand when a lot of times when we say brand, we're really talking about the brand identity. We're talking about the logo. That's the visual identity of the brand. The actual brand happens much more in store. It's going to be the experience inside the restaurant, inside their little country store and stuff like that. That sitting down, the fireplace crackling, the smells of the food and the fireplace, playing on like the big checker thing, playing the wooden peg board game, the food itself. That is the brand. The feeling that you have when you're in there eating with family and stuff like that, that is the Cracker Barrel brand. What we're talking about here that I always call a brand is really the brand identity. So it's also important to just know that, like, in the end, this stuff doesn't matter. If the food's good, people will still go there. These people that act like the new logo, they're not going to eat there anymore because the new logo is woke. Like, get out of here. They don't care. This is like when Facebook introduced the Facebook feed way back in like 2006 or whenever that was. People complained about it. They still used Facebook for another, 10 years or whatever. Let's talk about new releases. Gonna shout out surprisingly my least favorite one, or the least interesting one, I think, this week, and it's coming from Brandon Nickerson. I'm gonna go ahead and load these in the background. I apologize while the screen flash bangs you. Okay. I'm going to repeat myself like I always do. Go subscribe to Brandon Nickerson's newsletter because he sends out free fonts on a weekly basis, if not on like a bi-weekly basis. At least a few times a month, you're going to get free fonts from him. They go free during the launch window of the typeface, and then after that, they'll go back up to retail price. Let me move my face out of the way. This is BN Cinder. So Brandon Nickerson, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. He makes mostly display typefaces. What you see is what you get. And with this one, I don't know that this serves a purpose that just a typical sans serif couldn't solve. I think if you're going to be using this, it does have a little bit more character than like Noto Sans or something like that. But I don't see a reason necessarily to use this over just using Helvetica, if I'm being honest. Like, this is only a headline font. This is only a display font. It comes with these characters that I'm going to show you at the bottom if I can ever get there. He does do a lot of specimens and stuff. So it only comes with the characters you're seeing on the screen here. This is a display typeface, and it's free, so you can't complain about free. You can. You're just kind of a jerk. So it definitely has some character. I'm not hating on that. It has some character. It's got a little bit of like a reverse contrast thing going on where like the thicks are where you would typically expect the thins to be. But I don't know that I necessarily see a use case for this that couldn't also be handled by just any sans serif. Because you're going to have a limited character set here. I think the benefit that you're getting out of like the quirky character of this is heavily outweighed by the limited character set or the limited like glyph set that you're going to get. There's no lowercase, and then when you do like a big wall of text like this, there are a lot of heavy spots and stuff like that. So that's all I'm going to say about this one. I'm a fan of Brandon Nickerson. I always report on his new releases, especially when they come out for free. But this one's not for me. One that is for me, though, is this Primo serif. This is by Playtype. I'm going in order of ones that I'm excited about. I only have 4 typefaces today, but I think these 3 are all excellent. And the first one was free. So this is by Playtype. This is Primo serif. This is the typeface that was actually released back in like 2000, I think. Let me check the Instagram. Originally released in 2000 with just 4 styles. 25 years later, they re-released it. I think it's got 16 styles now. They do have a free trial where you can download this. I did that, but it's just got the basic characters, so can't test it out too much. And I do think that that's important, not being able to test it too much because of a reason that I'll show you at the bottom. So I'm going to slowly scroll through the specimens here. I think they do an excellent job of showcasing this. With 25 years of practice, I would hope that they've got it down by now, but it looks great. It's inspired clearly by like Garamond style typefaces, that 16th century typography. It looks very nice. I think the thing that they miss on is selling it, because let me go ahead and zoom in here. This right here, can we not see it? Maybe we can't see it when we're zoomed in. This right here is all they're showing us in terms of what the typeface includes. I don't have the email open right now. I think the email does a little bit of a better job showcasing what you're going to get from the font. But I think if you saw this and then you saw the price tag, let me go back to this, and then you saw the price tag of like 50 euros per weight. You can get it for 450 euros for the full family. I think if you saw what seems to be like a super limited character set, you know, like this character set it's more than Brandon Nickerson. I would be exaggerating if I was saying that it was equal to this one, but it's not like, it doesn't feel like you're getting a huge typeface that you would want to use for body copy for like a whole book or something like that, despite it looking beautifully. But I think in reality you actually do, because look at all these swashes. There are a ton of swashes that you can't play around with. It's got open type features that are case sensitive forms where they match either the cap height or the X height. If you're working with lowercase, uppercase, the letters just, they look beautiful. I know they are very Garamond-ish. They've got the old style E's here, E's and H's. So they've got alternates for the E's, alternates for the H's. You can see they've got the E's and A's there. They're doing alternates on. Like this is a super heavy, not heavy in a bad way, but like a super deep typeface that presumably must have a ton of characters and a ton of open type features to be able to do all this. Are we looking at the same one? Yeah, I think so. To be able to do everything that this typeface is doing, and they actually use the cent symbol wrong. The cents go after the numbers. I'm not sure if they did that on purpose. Maybe it's different in different countries. In the US, we put the cents after the 99. That's funny. But you can see it's got ligatures. You know, I'm sure it's even got some non-standard ligatures included too. And this is what kind of really blew my mind, is that they don't mention this being a variable font. Nowhere on this website does it, or on this webpage, does it say that it's a variable font. They say you get 16 different weights. They show them right here. This is the full thing. They're not telling you that it's variable, which is crazy because that's such a, you know, it's such a great feature to have, unless this is just animated working through, you know, unless they just like stacked all 16 faces, styles on there. But I really think this is probably a variable font. But it's got all these features. It's a super deep, look at that. They've even got sharp and soft alternates. You wouldn't know this visiting the website. So I think that Primo Serif is an excellent alternative to Garamond. It might even be better than Garamond. Like, look at that. That's crazy. But I think they could really do a better job marketing this, particularly on their own website, because if you're going to shell out 450 euros for this typeface, and that's also like per license. So that's like one desktop, one person. We're on one user right now where it's 450. If we want a website, we're looking at, if we want a website, we're looking at 1,350. So they're charging $900 for a website. If you want to put it on your app, you're looking at 5,000, you know, almost 6,000 euros for that. So for this price tag, I really think that you have to show people everything you're getting. When you get the free trial, you're just getting a super limited character set. So I think this is a great typeface. I think that they could really do a much better job showcasing it. But Primo Serif, if you're looking for an alternate to Garamond, man, this is a beautiful one with a ton of features. And it's, you know, it's got everything you would want in a typeface in 2025. Moving on to oh man, Kel, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your last name. Kel Troughton. I even had a brief interaction with him on Blue Sky this week, and I'm not sure how to say his last name. He's got Substantial here though. Substantial is a typeface that is inspired by Impact. So Impact is, as you know, like it was the original like meme font. You know, it was used on all the memes. It was super big when typefaces on the internet and on your PC in general were pretty limited. And you can definitely see the inspiration here, but it's just like a better version of Impact for 42 bucks. Let me go ahead and read the description real quick. Let me check my notes and then we'll look at this. I put that this is inspired by Impact. I really like it, and that the description had me sold. So let me go ahead and look at this here. So he was developing this, and then he says that he realized, you know, this brought him back to his youth. that it was actually inspired by Impact, and that not only did it like share some of those similar characteristics, but it also solved a lot of those problems that he had with Impact. So this has, let me see how many styles this has. I'm not seeing it anywhere. It looks like it has 5 weights. So this has 5 weights already. The first version contains 5 styles from light to bold, all narrow. So you can see up here, the typeface is very narrow, very Impact-ish. And you can see all 5 of them right here. So this is version 0.1. I'll give the quick spiel for Future Fonts here. If you don't know Future Fonts, type designers release their typefaces on here. I didn't look at the specimen. Maybe I'll pop that up real quick. Type designers release their typefaces while they're still in progress. They're at a point where like a graphic designer or a typographer can use them. They're not like unusable messes. They have to meet like a certain quality standard, but they're not going to be fully fleshed out in terms of maybe they don't have all the Latin characters for like extended Latin language and stuff like that. Maybe they're only going to work with like English and Spanish or something like that. They typically don't have come out released with like italics. That's something that Kel mentions on here. Like if people are interested, maybe I'll do an oblique version. I think he says, I don't know if he calls it oblique or if he calls it italic, but a slanted version. They don't have that. They don't have anything that's not narrow. But what it does is gives you a super cheap price. You buy it for 42 bucks. You can use it for desktop and web. And it does 2 things. One, it helps fund like Kel designing this further. It helps the type designers have some money while they work on their projects and not have to work for years and years and years and then just release a typeface all at once. So it gives the type designers a little bit of money in their pocket now while they work on the typeface, and it gives you the benefit of getting the typeface cheaper because you can pay 42 bucks for this now. When the updates are done and there's 10 different styles, 15 different styles, 20 different styles, the price is going to go up. So when this is a fully complete typeface, the price will go up. But if you pay the 42 bucks now or whatever, you know, the designer on Future Fonts is charging, then you get all of the updates, which is awesome. Let's look at the specimen real quick. Okay, so it's a pretty simple specimen, but that does look cool, doesn't it? Let's see if we can get this full width. I typically use ocular. Okay, there we go. Yeah, he's done a nice job kind of displaying some of this here. But yeah, let's not linger on this too much because this is still a typeface in progress. But for 42 bucks, I rarely purchase fonts when I don't have a specific need in the moment. I'm not someone, I buy video games on Steam when I don't play them for like 2 years. But I don't typically buy typefaces unless I actually need them for a project because it's just not a good use of money in most cases. This is one that I'm very seriously considering buying ahead of time because the price is right. Impact is such an iconic typeface that having like a new version of Impact, I think would be really, really cool. And then I trust Kel to like deliver on the promise of continuing this project and expanding the typeface. So if you're in the same boat as me, this might be one worth looking up. And this is just his Instagram showcasing some of it. I'm not going to go through that. Let's look at Are.na. Let me pause this real quick. So there's a really good interview. I guess I didn't open it. There's a really good interview. Oh no, shoot. I might have linked it in the description. If not, I'll try to find it. There was a really good interview. No, I know where it is. I know where it is. It's on the Are.na website. So there's a really good... I'm going to find it. They linked 2 different things on here. There it is. Dinamo of... what is it? ABC Dinamo? ABC Dinamo? I thought that's what it was. Dinamo. Let's find it real quick. I think it's ABC Dinamo. There it is. ABC Dinamo. Dinamo created, we talked about them last week actually. Dinamo created a refreshed version of Arial for Are.na. I'm not someone that uses Are.na. I've heard it in passing a few times, but I'm not super familiar with this platform or why people would use it. As far as I can tell, it's kind of like a collaborative mood board. It's kind of like something between Notion and I don't know, Pinterest or something maybe. I'm not sure. If you use Are.na, please leave me a comment and give me some context on like why you use this. I'm more excited about this because of the interview. I got too many tabs open now. This interview right here, I'll make sure that I link this in the description if it's not already. It's called Introducing Arial, Are.na's New Typeface. Let me just point this out to get it out of the way. There was a typeface that released earlier this year called Arial, spelled this way. And it was basically just Arial. They released Arial and Times New Human. And the idea behind these two typefaces were, let's rip off Times New Roman, let's rip off Arial, and let's add this symbol that replaces the M dash. So instead of like the long M dash, it was this wavy sort of M dash. It was an M dash with lines coming up and down the bottom. And basically their idea was like, hey, we're going to use this M dash instead of the typical one, because then people will know that it's not generated by ChatGPT. Cool, like sort of like trendy thing to get a few headlines and stuff. But that Arial is not this Arial. Even though they're spelled the same, hopefully it doesn't cause any problems for Are.na and Dinamo. I don't think that it will, but you never know. Basically, Dinamo recreated Arial for Are.na. And this interview, I'm not going to spoil everything. Go ahead and check it out. This interview goes over like why they did it, and it's super interesting in terms of typically when there's a typeface revival, people are going back and looking at old references, and they're looking at like old type specimen books. So maybe they'll go grab a book from 500 years ago, or maybe they'll grab like the actual metal plates, if any of them still exist, the metal pieces of text. But typically you're looking at like an old reference in like a type specimen book. And the interview here was really interesting because Dinamo is talking about how they did all of their references from screenshots. So they went back into like old Windows operating systems, and they actually noted that like Arial existed before Microsoft used it, or no, it existed before the internet. Man, I'm messing up my history here. Read the interview. But it's really interesting the way that they talked about it. And what I mostly took away from it was the enthusiasm. Because in reality, Are.na was already using Arial, the monotype created Microsoft famed Arial of, the early internet. Are.na was already using Arial, and they were doing it purposely. They were purposely doing it. It wasn't like an accident or something. And replacing it with Areal, I think they're probably even said the exact same. Replacing it with the new Arial makes no sense at all. Except for the fact that they can refresh it in a way that they described as being related to this presentation given by Kristen Sue Lucas, it's not a presentation, it's a performance by Kristen Sue Lucas called Refresh. I linked this in the description too as well. It's something that I would never have even known existed. So this performance was in 2017. TLDR is that this woman right here, Kristen Sue Lucas, in the state of California, wanted to do an official name change from Kristen Sue Lucas to Kristen Sue Lucas. She wanted to have the exact same name, and in the end, she was able to do it. You can see here's like the official forms. The judge granted it, but it's like this funny sort of performance about like her wanting to do it, but it's a real conversation that she had with the judge. And she thought of it as like a refresh. She was changing her name from Kristen Lucas to Kristen Lucas, spelled the exact same. And he's like, you're not changing anything. And she's like, but I see it as like this spiritual change. I see it if like the court does this, if the state of California does this, then I see it as being different. Even though they're the same, I see it as being like a refresh, like how you refresh a website and the page is the same, but you've refreshed it. The interaction, just go watch it. It's only like 10 minutes long. But that's how Dinamo presented this I'm losing it. How Dinamo presented Arial being recreated as Areal for Are.na. And I love this project, not because I'm in love with Arial. Yeah, I've never really thought twice about Arial, but I do have a newfound respect for it after this, reading this interview and seeing this case study here. I love that they did something that's ridiculous, that they didn't need to do, but they wanted to do, and it technically does make it better. Arial by Dinamo for Are.na is technically better than the original Arial. It fixes a lot of the problems. It expands the typeface itself, creates a bunch of new characters, a bunch of new open type features, makes it variable. It does everything that you would want a 2025 typeface to do, right? Especially one that's being used for like a big corporate brand. But they didn't need to do it. No one's ever going to notice, but they put all the passion into it that they would with any other typeface design, any other like branding project. And I don't know, there's something charming about that. There's something very, something very inspiring, I guess, for lack of a better word, that they went and did this thing, even though it's silly and almost no one will ever notice the difference, because it mattered to Are.na and it mattered to Dinamo, and because it mattered to them, it made it like a project worth doing. But yeah, they took all the references from screenshots and stuff like that. I loved it. I loved that they related it to the performance, the refresh performance by Chris and Sue Lucas. I just thought it was inspirational, I guess. At least interesting. I think people will find it. That's all for new typefaces. Let's talk about one article that I want to look at. It's actually not a typography article. Let's not give them anything. Reject all. Okay. This is not something I would typically talk about. It's from the Daily Mail. And to be honest, I didn't even read most of this article. I looked, I read portions of it and I looked through it, but the article itself is not important. What's important here are the aesthetics, the design, because I think it relates to a trend that we're going to be seeing, which is, I'm going to entirely blame on Apple with their Apple Glass. Let's go ahead and close all of these. And that is, as we scroll down through this, first of all, it's very different from Daily Mail's typical design. Let's go ahead and show their typical design. Like, look at this, it is what it is. This is their typical design. But this article is also the Daily Mail. And this is a deep dive, what really happened to the unsinkable Bayesian super yacht. So they go into this story and it's actually really sad. There was like a 18-year-old girl on here that died. It's sad when anyone dies, but she's on this trip with her dad and drowns to death. Like, that's horrible. Let's just focus on the graphics and stuff here. I really liked the way that this was, how they showcased everything is very interactive. Like these things, the times are like scrolling through at the same time that the yacht voyage, shows up on the map there. What I was going to get to though, is that this, let's see if we can I don't know if it's going to break the website if we make it bigger. Okay, so it looks like the graphics in the background stay the same, but the graphics in the front do actually get bigger, which is great. But you can see, you get this frosted glass effect on these text boxes, these boxes that are kind of going up. And I think that this is what we're going to be seeing with Apple Glass. I think they've done a decent job with it here though. Like, you can even see, let me go ahead and use the slow scrolling thing here. You can see it looks pretty good. Like, the blur and stuff works pretty well. I know Apple's not the first to do it. I know that the Daily Mail's not the first to do it either. But I think that this is a trend that we're going to be seeing a lot of. So I think it's worth noting right now. So we're seeing it here. And that's basically all I wanted to point out, I guess. There's not a whole lot to this. But we only have 18 minutes left before I have to go. So I don't think we're actually going to get to the interview. Let me go ahead and show you xheightable. And then if there's any interest, I will upload the interview as like an unlisted one, and I'll link it here. So xheightable, it's a free tool. It's a free pairing tool that anybody can use. I feel really bad. I did this interview with Andy. He created xheightable. I was really excited about it. It was a great conversation. Andy, thank you for the interview. I realized afterwards though, or like as I was trying to edit it and things like that, like if I'm gonna do interviews, I really need to do them live because I just don't have the amount of time and effort that it takes to edit an interview and then do all the graphics on top of it, because we did purely a purely audio driven interview. It's just not something that I have the capacity for. It's not something I have time to do when I'm doing the news every week and then trying to do the book reviews and stuff like that. So unfortunately, I will link this. I will upload it and then I'll link it. I will commit to that. I'm going to upload it. I'll link it in the description. So if you're watching this a couple days from now, or a year from now, it's going to be linked in the description. It's going to be unlisted, so it's not going to show up in your feed. But xheightable. I did a great interview with Andy. Andy's actually a UX UI designer, and that entirely makes sense when you get into what this is. It's a website that just compares the X height of two different fonts. So he's got a little bit of a introduction here. Gives you like what is X height, tells you what it is. It's the it's the height of the lowercase letter. How can I use X height for pairing fonts? And he's got some instructions here. Let's see how much I can zoom in without breaking the website. How can I use it? Basically, he's saying that if they have similar proportions, they're probably going to work better together. So these two here, they both have a 76% X height, and how he's calculating that is the cap height is 100%, 76% is the X height on that one. These two here, 76, 74, he's saying that's still pretty good. And then lastly, you get down to here, we've got two different ones here. This is Enter and Garamond, and they have a 16% difference. He's saying, actually, I think that would be 14%. It's going from 76% down to 62%. Maybe no, it probably is 16 because you're actually taking 100%. He's right there. I'm wrong. So there's a 16% difference between these two because you have to be relative to the 76%. And he's saying that like maybe that doesn't necessarily work as well. We saw a really good use case for this in Thinking with Type by Ellen Lupton, the third edition. I pointed this out. She uses Freight in there, and Freight is a superfamily that has Freight Sans and Freight Serif. And whenever you're reading the book, you're reading in the Sans, Freight Sans. I think I'm remembering this right. And then whenever there are quotes, she would use the serif. It might be vice versa. It might be the opposite. She's using a serif, I think, and then when there are quotes in the book, she's using sans. And that one works very easily because it's a super family. What Andy's doing here for you is helping you figure out how you could do that without having a super family. So these two fonts here, this is Enter and Bitter, they match perfectly, 76%, and you've got this sort of wedged serif typeface that you can match with your sans serif typeface. Awesome. I thought that this was just such a cool thing. And then let's go ahead and go to the app. So the app itself is just a website. Let me reset this. I think we could probably zoom into like there without breaking it. So I really liked this project. I think it's super simple. It's not monetized. There's nothing sketchy about it. If you want to buy him a coffee, you can buy him a coffee. You want to say hi, you can say hi. That's how I reached out to him back in like April. I reached out to him before my daughter was even born. My daughter's over 4 months now. We did the interview in May, so it's been about 3 months since the interview happened. And I feel really bad that I haven't posted the interview. I worked through all of it. I edited the whole thing, so I'm going to post, we'll do it unlisted. We'll post it unlisted and link it in the description here. But I really love this, and there are some great combinations that you would never even think of on here. And it's just really interesting that all of this information is included in like the font files. So if you're a type designer, you're probably like, duh, Curtis, we know this is included. Me being a graphic designer, just like a typography enthusiast, I didn't know that you could just kind of pull this. And he makes a note in the interview like, yeah, you probably could have done this like 20 years ago. Because this information was still available there. And he goes into much more detail in the interview about how he's doing this, why he's doing it, what inspired him to do it. It's a really good conversation, or at least it was really fun for me to do. But let's go ahead and swap one of these out here. So we can use, I don't know. When I did the interview, he had about 100 fonts. He's now got over 150 on here. But let's see, what typeface do I like? I think he's got Gothic on here. Let's go find, or not Gotham, I think he's got Gotham. So he's got Gotham on here, which is 74%. And then it immediately gives you some options. So you can do A to Z up here, or you can do the rating. So the rating is going to give you like, these are the best ones that are going to match. Obviously Gotham is 100%, it's going to match. But Trade Gothic is like a 72%. Montserrat is 76. No, we want to do it by xheight. I'm not sure what the rating is. Maybe that's like, yeah, I'm not sure what rating is. Maybe that's popularity. But let's do it by xheight. So we can scroll through right here and we can see it keeps them in order from the highest xheight at the top, 80% there with obviously, and then Gotham here is at 74. So it keeps it in place. I like that because then you can scroll up and you can see, you know, these are the bigger typefaces. You scroll down, these are the smaller ones. He's a smart guy, UX, UI. Also, he's got a great English accent. But yeah, so we know here if we're looking for like, okay, let's match this with, what do we, so Gotham is going to be like a geometric sans serif. Let's find a serif to put this with. We want to stay with 76% or 74%. He's saying like his recommended is source serif. I think that's actually a nice pair. Let's see what else we can do. We could do Roboto slab, and you can see them kind of mixed here. We could do, oh, this is interesting. Piazzolla. I'm not familiar with Piazzolla. That looks interesting though, doesn't it? I wish there was a button. Oh, there is a button to swap. Boom, there you go. So he's got it laid out here with like a little bit of a specimen. I guess it's not necessarily a specimen. I'm going to call it a specimen. He's got it laid out here where you can see headline and body copy, and you can swap them back and forth so you can see like how does one look as the headline, how does one work as body copy. I think Gotham here works better as the body copy. I would actually like to change that out for something a little more freight sans. That works. That's kind of fun, but maybe the contrast is a little bit better. So you can pair these together. They're both 74, but I would never think to pair these together. They look very nice. You can scroll down a little bit here. And this is the last thing that I'll comment on because I think it's really cool. And there's lots of really cool things like this with the website. But it's these stats right here. So we've got the xheight like we've been looking at. And then we've got the percent of the cap height as the percent of the font size. I'm not sure what that means. The cap height. Oh, okay. So that would be like the cap height versus like because ascenders can go above the cap height, descenders can go below the cap height. But he's got suggested paragraph line height. This is something that I asked him about because I was super interested in it. I thought it was a really cool feature to have on here, and it's based off the xheight. So when we look at these lines of text right here, we're looking at them. We think about the leading, like this suggested line height. We think about the leading. It goes from the baseline of one to like the m square of the next one. So it's not creating a space between the baseline and the xheight, but that's what really matters. If we look at this text here, I'm going to break it by making it even bigger. If we look at this text here, we can see that the main line, like the main block, if this was just a big long rectangle, the main rectangle would be that xheight. It would go from baseline to the xheight. And when we think about leading, we don't consider how tall the xheight is compared to the line above it. And if that xheight is really big, it makes that visual line between the baseline of the text above it down to the xheight, it makes that line seem smaller. What Andy has done here is figured out like, okay, since that matters, let's give you suggested paragraph line height based on that xheight. I think that this is something super interesting, and he mentions like he came up with his own formula. He didn't do any scientific studies on it. I think, as we mentioned earlier, Sofie Beier, I think that if anybody knows, Sofie Beier probably knows. So maybe it's worth reaching out to her. Maybe it's actually in one of those books behind me. But I found this super interesting and just something to think about, even if you don't use the website. Come away with this is that rather than think about line height and like pure terms of like, okay, my text is 12 point font, so I'm going to use like an 18 point line height. think about how big the X height is, because if you're using an X height that's really, really small, it's going to make the same line height seem much bigger, right? Does that make sense? Because there's going to be more space between the X height and the baseline above it, whereas a tall X height has less space. So X height and the relationship to line spacing, I think is super. And I'm going to upload the full interview. Andy, I'm sorry that I didn't post it sooner, and I'm sorry that it's not going to get the treatment that it deserves. But it was a learning experience for me, and I hope that everyone can appreciate xheightable. It's a free website. There's no ads. There's nothing on it, and you can link directly to these. You can link directly to get the fonts. These are all fonts that you can either get from Adobe or Google Fonts. Andy mentions why he's doing that in the interview. They're not affiliate links. He's not getting paid if you click on this, at least as of the time of this. He doesn't have any plans, or he didn't when I did the interview, any plans to like monetize those links either. So great website, done for the love of making, you know, this type of project. And I really appreciate it. I really appreciate Andy for doing the interview with me. I'll have that linked in the description. Go check it out if you're at all interested in this, or interested in kind of like the back end stuff of it, because he talks about it much more eloquently than I ever could. Let me switch to the face cam. Let's see. There it is. I know today was a little bit of a mess. It's kind of hot in here. I probably shouldn't have wore this hoodie. It's still technically winter in Brazil, in South Brazil, but with my computer going full blast and no air in this room, it's very warm. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable, but I hope that you got something useful out of this. I hope that you'll join me next week. So next week I will be back. I will be reporting on Typography News. Leave any comments in the description if you have opinions on, you know, the new National Design Studio or the Cracker Barrel logo or any of the fonts that I linked. Is Arial different from Arial? And I'll be back next week. 2 weeks from now, be taking a break for Hollow Knight. You should too. Going to be a great game, I think. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.